Call it selfish if you want. Emotional boundaries and self-respect mean refusing to bleed for those who never learned to water you. Hey friends, welcome back. Today, we're unpacking something that hits close to home for many: the power of emotional boundaries and the quiet strength of self-respect in a world that often calls it selfish. So let's dive in. There comes a time, often quietly, often after years of shouldering too much, when you realize that love shouldn't feel like a burden, especially not the kind that leaves you drained, second-guessing your worth, and walking on emotional eggshells around people who are supposed to care for you. This isn't just about family or friends. It's about anyone who's built their comfort on the erosion of your peace. We don't talk enough about the weight of emotional labor, the late-night calls, the constant problem-solving, the silent endurance of guilt trips, manipulative gratitude, and subtle demands. At first, you give because that's what love does. It shows up, it supports. But over time, if unchecked, that same love becomes a currency people start to expect, not appreciate. And here's the truth: raw and unfiltered. You don't owe anyone your peace, not your time, not your energy. These are not debts to be paid simply because someone calls you family, friend, or even partner. Titles don't give people the right to trample over your boundaries like they're optional speed bumps. Think of your emotional well-being like a garden. You've spent years tending it, nurturing it with patience, forgiveness, and empathy. But what happens when someone keeps stepping over your flower beds without removing their muddy shoes? Sooner or later, the flowers stop blooming. That isn't selfishness. That's exhaustion. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about protecting the parts of you that have been overexposed for too long. It's saying, I love you, but I won't allow you to keep emptying me. It's learning to spot the difference between being supportive and being used, between giving with love and giving out of fear. You're not heartless for saying no. You're not cold for reclaiming your time. You're reclaiming your dignity, something you never should have had to bargain with in the first place. As we grow older, the expectations don't disappear. They mutate. People may assume you have more time, more wisdom, more patience. But age doesn't make you limitless. It simply makes your peace more sacred. And in these later chapters of life, peace isn't a luxury, it's a right. So, if your presence is constantly drained by guilt, if your yes is expected without thanks, if your silence is mistaken for agreement, it's time to draw that invisible line. You don't need to shout. You don't need to explain yourself to people who never bother to understand you. You only need to choose yourself, and keep choosing yourself. Let them adjust, because when you finally stop watering relationships that leave you dry, you begin to grow in ways you never thought possible. Saying no without guilt is neither difficult nor unethical. It starts small, doesn't it? A relative calls, says they're in a bind, again, and they just need a little help. You hesitate. Your gut clenches. Not because you don't care, but because you do, too much. And you already know how this goes. You say yes. You shift things around. You overextend. And days later, you're left picking up the emotional pieces while they move on, like you were never holding anything in the first place. How many times have you said yes when your soul whispered no? How often have you replayed that one moment after the call ended, thinking, why did I agree to that? I'm exhausted. I can't afford this. I didn't want to. Here's the thing nobody tells you: saying no is a boundary. Guilt is the rusted chain people wrap around it to keep you quiet. We're conditioned to feel bad for prioritizing ourselves, especially in families or cultures where martyrdom is glorified and personal sacrifice is silently expected. But let's be real. How many times have you been expected to stretch yourself thinner than skin just to make others more comfortable? When someone asks you for something unreasonable, money you don't have, time you can't give, support you emotionally can't offer, you are not obligated to say yes just to keep the peace. That kind of peace isn't peace. It's quiet resentment wearing a fake smile. Imagine someone handing you a bag of bricks and saying, "Carry this for me." And you, out of habit, take it, even though your arms are already trembling under the weight of your own. That's what happens when we say yes to unreasonable demands. Every yes that should have been a no builds a load that was never yours to carry. You are not a bad person for refusing. You're not selfish. You're aware of your limits, aware of patterns that drain you, aware of the fact that your time and energy aren't renewable resources you can just top off like gas in a car. Let's talk about some real life moments. The cousin who only calls when they need money. The coworker who dumps their tasks on you because you're so capable. The friend who disappears until it's time to ask for help moving again. We laugh them off. We joke. But deep down, it chips away at our sense of worth. And every time you say yes, when your spirit says no, you're choosing their comfort over your own stability. That is not sustainable. That is not love. That is emotional self-neglect. So here's a question. When was the last time someone respected your no without pushing back, guilting you, or making you feel small? If you can't remember, it's time to start giving your no the same weight you've always given your yes, and let it stand tall, without guilt, without a long explanation, without flinching. Protecting your peace is essential. Protect your peace like it's oxygen, because it is. When someone hugs you with one arm and slips guilt into your pocket with the other, that's not love. That's control dressed in concern. That's manipulation with manners. And if you don't call it what it is, it grows. Quieter, slicker, heavier. Protect your peace like it's a lifeline, because it is. Some people don't scream to control you. They sigh. They pout. They say, "I thought you were better than this," or "After all I've done for you." And suddenly you're drowning in shame that isn't even yours. That's the trick. That's the design. They don't need to shout when guilt does the job for them. You have to see through it. Through the soft tone and trembling voice. Through the fragile, "I just need one more thing." You're not cruel for stepping back. You're not heartless for choosing distance. You're healing by choosing clarity over chaos. And healing demands boundaries. It demands you stop handing out pieces of your sanity just to prove you're loyal. It demands you cut the rope when someone keeps using it to pull you into their storms. Because here's the truth. Your peace isn't a luxury. It's not optional. It's not a nice bonus on a good day. It's essential. Without it, your sleep is shallow. Your thoughts race. Your spirit bruises in silence. And all for what? A smile that comes only after you break yourself to please them. Protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. You don't have to answer every call. You don't have to smile through every manipulation. You don't have to justify your silence or explain your distance. You are allowed to walk away, to stay silent, to refuse the invitation to the same old argument, the same old drama, the same old guilt trip with a new suitcase. Because when you start protecting your peace, you begin to feel lighter. Not because life stops being hard, but because you finally stop carrying what was never yours. Repeat that. You finally stop carrying what was never yours. They call it duty. You call it survival. They call it love. You call it exhaustion. They say family comes first. You say not when it comes at the cost of myself. Protect your peace like your life depends on it. because parts of it do. The calm in your chest, the clarity in your mind, the ability to breathe without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing down on you. That's your peace. And you don't need anyone's permission to protect it. So build the wall, close the door, hang the do not disturb sign on your spirit, and let them knock. Think saying no is selfish? Think again. What I'm about to reveal will flip everything you've been taught about loyalty and self-respect. Love doesn't leave you hollow. Obligation doesn't bruise your soul. And family, real family, doesn't feast on your kindness until you forget what it feels like to be whole. But emotional exploitation, it's dressed in all the right costumes. It smiles like love. It speaks in the language of care. It carries photo albums and family recipes. And it whispers, "You owe us." No, you don't. You owe no one your slow destruction. Not even the people who raised you, who share your blood, who know exactly which strings to pull to make you dance like you're 10 years old again, trying to be good enough, trying to keep the peace, trying not to disappoint. But here's the thing. Love doesn't require self-abandonment. When someone only remembers you when they need help, when their emergencies are always your responsibility, when guilt is their currency and you're always the ATM, what you're experiencing is not love. That's emotional pickpocketing. That's manipulation wearing a familiar face. It's time to see it, to really see it, to look past the birthday wishes and polite texts and recognize the patterns. How they apologize with silence. How they gaslight your pain with, "You're being sensitive." How they rewrite history every time you try to speak your truth. They don't want resolution. They want control. Control that feels like closeness. Control that looks like care. But emotional exploitation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. A look, a favor expected, a sudden coldness when you say no, a punishment through withdrawal, and it chips away at you until you start second-guessing your own instincts, tiptoeing around your own needs. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable in the castle of your soul. Their love shouldn't cost you your dignity. Their approval shouldn't require your silence. And their presence shouldn't come bundled with fear, pressure, or exhaustion. This isn't your failure to love them better. This is their refusal to love you without strings. There's a difference between sacrifice and surrender, between helping and being harvested, between being there for someone and becoming their emotional hostage. You're not overreacting. You're waking up. You're noticing how every "I need you" really means "I need what you give me." How every apology is a reset button for their behavior, not a commitment to change. How you're the one always cleaning the mess they made, emotionally, financially, mentally. This is not love. Love lifts. Love listens. Love owns its damage and works to heal it. Emotional exploitation only takes. And when you stop giving, it punishes. So name it. That shadow you've been living under. That ache in your gut when the phone rings. That sinking feeling every time they say your name like it's a summons, not a greeting. It's not your fault, but it is your right to break the pattern. Redefining priorities in later life is not bad. There comes a time in life, not marked by a birthday or a retirement party, when the whisper inside you grows louder than the noise around you. A time when you look back and realize just how much of your life has been spent in service of everyone else's needs, dreams, and emergencies. And somewhere in that reflection, a truth starts to surface. Fragile, but bold. It's my turn now. You've played every role: provider, protector, peacemaker, fixer. You've worn yourself thin to keep others warm. missed meals so someone else could eat, held back tears so others wouldn't feel guilty, postponed dreams with the lie, maybe later. Well, later has arrived, and it doesn't ask for permission. It demands attention. This stage of your life is not the leftovers. It's not the scraps of time, energy, or joy that remain after everyone else has eaten. This is the main course, the feast you've been preparing for decades. You've earned the right to be full of peace, of laughter, of rest. But it starts with a radical shift, redefining your priorities without apology. No longer should guilt have a seat at the head of your table. No longer should your calendar revolve around obligations that leave you empty. You've done your part. You've raised, you've given, you've shown up. It's time now to turn that same energy inward. What brings you joy? Not them, not your children, not your siblings, not the ones who only remember you when they need something. What fills your lungs with air? What slows down your racing thoughts and makes you smile? Not for show, but for real. Maybe it's art, or gardening, or waking up without an alarm clock. Maybe it's dancing in your living room, traveling alone, saying no and not explaining why. Maybe it's learning something new, even if the world says you're too old. The world lies. You are not too old. You are just now entering the part of your life where you know yourself better than ever, and that is power. This is not selfish. This is sacred. Choosing your peace is not abandoning others. It's returning to yourself. You've spent years proving your love through sacrifice. Now prove your love for yourself through self-honoring choices. You don't need to justify this shift. You've given them decades. Give yourself what's left, fully, boldly, freely. You are not a side character in someone else's story. You are the author now. You hold the pen. And the next chapter, it should taste like freedom. Let them call you different. Let them say you've changed. Let them not understand. Because peace rarely asks for validation, and fulfillment never begs to be explained. So start today, not tomorrow. Not after one more favor. Not after one more guilt-ridden yes. You've waited long enough. There's an invisible script many of us were handed somewhere along the way. A script that says, if you're kind, you'll comply. If you're a good parent, sibling, or spouse, you'll sacrifice. That if someone raises their voice, you lower yours. If there's tension in the room, you swallow your truth so others can stay comfortable. But what happens when that script no longer fits your spirit? You've bent yourself so often that flexible became your identity. You've given up small pieces of yourself. One, it's fine, at a time. Until the reflection in the mirror looks more like someone others needed you to be, not who you truly are. And now, in this chapter of life where clarity is sharper and time is louder, you're realizing something essential. You don't have to keep playing a part that hurts to perform. Because there's a basic structure to peace, it's built on boundaries. It's in saying, that doesn't work for me anymore, without needing a follow-up sentence. It's in honoring what your body, mind, and spirit need, even when others don't understand. Especially then, your identity is not a community project. It's not a mold to be shaped by guilt, tradition, or obligation. It is yours. Intact, sacred, worth defending. So when the family dinners become arenas of subtle judgment, when aging makes others treat you like you're fragile or foolish, when the pressure to conform whispers, don't make waves, you stand taller. Because peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is being able to hold your ground when conflict tries to erase you. And yes, it might rattle a few cages. People may say you've become difficult or selfish or too much. But maybe those are just words people use when they can no longer manipulate your silence. Ask yourself this: at what point did the comfort of others start costing you your sense of self? When did your yes stop being generous and start being automatic? And why does saying no still feel like breaking a promise when the only promise you should be keeping is to yourself? You are allowed to pause, to say, "Let me think about that," instead of rushing into guilt-driven agreement. You're allowed to walk away from chaos, even if it's in your own living room. You're allowed to choose peace, even if it disrupts the family dynamic. Because if peace only exists when you are invisible, then it was never peace to begin with. This is your life, your energy, your space. Protect it like you would your breath. Without it, everything else suffocates. You've already spent years being what others needed. Now, let your basic structure be built on what you need: respect, rest, clarity, joy. No more crumbling quietly to hold up a version of harmony that costs you your truth. There comes a time when your soul just doesn't have the stamina for other people's chaos. Not because you've grown cold, not because you don't care, but because peace, real peace, has become too precious to waste. Family conflict has a way of dragging you in like quicksand, with guilt as the rope and obligation as the anchor. They say things like, "You're the only one who can fix this," or "Don't you care what happens to us?" But the truth they don't speak is this: they're asking you to bleed so their wounds don't show. But you've done your part. You've shown up, stayed quiet when you should have screamed, kept the peace when it shattered you. You don't owe anyone your involvement in chaos that was never yours to begin with. Self-preservation is not selfishness. It's survival. And at this stage in life, survival should not be about constantly proving your worth in emotionally draining rooms. It should be about reclaiming your breath, your time, and your stillness. You are not a sponge for everyone else's pain. You are not a fixer. You are not a shield. You are not a character in someone else's emotional soap opera. You are a human being with every right to peace, joy, and boundaries. And then there's the quiet war of identity. The way people try to tuck you into labels you've long outgrown. You're too old for that. That's just how it is at your age. You should know better. As if wisdom must come wrapped in silence and surrender. But you are not invisible. You are not a role. You are a story. Messy, layered, beautiful. And no, you don't owe anyone the version of you they're more comfortable with. You're allowed to evolve, to stay fierce, to remain curious, loud, expressive, independent. You're allowed to say, "This is still me," whether you like it or not. And when guilt comes knocking, because it always does, you don't have to answer. Guilt that demands you betray yourself is not love. It's control dressed up as care. You can love people and still choose yourself. You can offer compassion without surrendering your stability. And if they make you feel like peace is a luxury only they deserve, then let them sit with their discomfort. It's not your job to cushion it. Let them call you distant, different, too guarded now. Let them say you've changed. Because maybe you have. And maybe, just maybe, that change is what freedom looks like when it's finally tired of being shackled by guilt, expectation, and noise. This isn't about pushing people away. It's about pulling yourself out of places where your soul was always asked to shrink. You're not here to disappear behind their drama. You're here to show up, fully, wholly, and unapologetically. You don't owe your dignity to anyone, not your family, not your past, not even your history of always saying yes. There comes a point when emotional obligation becomes a weight tied to your feet, dragging you under while you smile to keep the peace. And that point, it's where self-respect steps in and says, enough. Because choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's breath. It's breaking free from the invisible chain of guilt that's been wrapped around your heart for years. Think about how many times you've said yes when every fiber of your being whispered no. The ride you didn't want to give, the money you didn't have to spare, the time you carved out of an already empty cup. Not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want them to think you didn't care. But here's the thing. You can care deeply and still say no. You can love someone and still not be their lifeline. Because your love is not a transaction. It's not something they get to withdraw from every time they're in trouble, especially when they never deposit anything back into you. And age, oh, they love to use that one, don't they? You're too old to change now. You should just let it go. You should be thankful we still come to you. As if getting older means becoming a doormat with a smile. But your age is not a signal to shrink. It's a badge of survival. You've lived, sacrificed, stretched yourself thinner than anyone had the right to ask. That doesn't mean you owe them your silence, your compliance, or your permission to treat you like a fixture instead of a force. Your value didn't retire. Your spirit didn't age out of mattering. You are not someone who exists only to support others while your own joy sits on a shelf collecting dust. And no, your freedom is not up for debate. It's not something to be negotiated at the family table, bartered in exchange for temporary peace. You are allowed to live on your own terms, unapologetically. You are allowed to rest without guilt, to heal without interruption, to say no without needing to explain why. The truth is, when you begin to choose yourself, people will say you've changed, that you've become cold, that you've forgotten your role. But what they're really saying is, we don't like the version of you that can't be manipulated anymore. Let them talk. Let them adjust to the boundaries they never thought you'd build. Because your heart, it's still open. Your love, still strong. But your self-respect, that's finally awake. And it's not going back to sleep. They ask for your time, then your silence, then your soul. And when you hesitate, even for a moment, they call it defiance. They say you've changed, that you're harder to deal with, that you've lost the softness they used to mold at will. But here's the truth they don't say out loud. It's not your change that unsettles them. It's your awakening. Because for years, you played your role. The comforter, the forgiver, the one who bent without breaking. And when conflict arose, you swallowed it, pushed it down deep, until it gnawed at your peace like a quiet fire. They demanded your emotional involvement, your willingness to feel what they felt, fix what they broke, and carry what they refused to. And you did. Not because you had to, but because you thought love meant sacrifice. You thought family meant self-erasure. You thought guilt was a normal part of giving. But that guilt wasn't yours to carry. It was passed down, layer by layer, word by word, from generations who were never taught how to say, I matter too. It came with the script: be agreeable, be quiet, be available, be grateful. But now, your soul wants to rewrite the ending. Because guilt and love cannot sit at the same table when one is used to control the other. So yes, there's pressure. Pressure to conform, to keep the peace by sacrificing your own, to go along with the same dysfunctional dance just so no one feels uncomfortable. But here's what no one tells you. Their comfort should not cost you your clarity. The internal struggle is real, because part of you wants to keep being that version of you they liked, the agreeable one, the helpful one, the one who didn't challenge their expectations. But the deeper part of you, the part that's been whispering for years, is tired of stretching, tired of pleasing, tired of living in pieces for the sake of others' comfort. So you make a choice, not a dramatic door-slamming exit, not a declaration carved in stone, just a quiet, firm, steady reclaiming. You choose peace, not passivity, but presence. You choose authenticity, not rebellion, but remembrance of who you are beneath the conditioning. You choose to protect your energy, not because you don't care, but because you finally care enough about yourself. You begin to repeat it like a mantra. I am not here to live someone else's version of me. I am not here to perform. I am not here to be drained. I am here to be whole, to be free, to be aligned with the truth that's been buried under decades of obligation. And when the conflict rises again, and it will, you'll meet it with clarity, not compliance. Because you've made your resolution, not to win an argument, but to stop living a life where your peace is always the first thing on the chopping block. Your life is not a bargaining chip. You've carried enough. The expectations, the unspoken rules, the emotional weight that never seemed to lighten, no matter how much love you gave. And now is not the time to shrink further. It's the time to stand fully in who you are, with grace, with courage, and with no apology. This life, the one you've worked for, bled for, sacrificed for, it's yours. And no one, no matter how close, how beloved, or how convincing, has the right to rewrite the terms of your peace. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cold for pulling back from what drains you. You are not wrong for saying, this version of me will no longer be available for emotional negotiations. Let that truth settle in your bones. You've spent years, maybe decades, saying yes when your heart whispered no, agreeing to things that chipped away at your joy, silencing yourself for the sake of someone else's comfort. But here's what you must remember. Self-worth isn't something you earn. It's something you claim. And you claim it by choosing you. When the phone rings with another demand masked as duty, you get to pause and ask, does this serve my peace? Does this honor the life I still have to live? If the answer is no, then that no you give back is not rejection. It's protection. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding your growth. Stop guilt-tripping yourself for choosing rest over resentment. Stop believing the lie that love equals obligation. Love should uplift, not deplete. You do not have to prove your goodness through suffering. You do not have to sacrifice your joy to earn someone else's approval. You do not have to lose yourself to be loved. Here's what you do have to do. You draw the line and hold it firm, even when it shakes. You name your needs out loud, and don't backpedal when met with silence. You show up for yourself like you've shown up for everyone else. You reclaim your mornings, your quiet moments, your joy, your voice. Not someday. Now. Because there is power in living without the weight of others' expectations. There is beauty in choosing peace without performance. And there is healing in realizing that you are not too old, too late, or too difficult to begin again. So here's the final truth. Your life is not a bargaining chip. It's a home. A home you get to protect, decorate, laugh in, cry in, and finally, feel safe in. Let no one make you feel guilty for guarding your door. You have earned this version of yourself. Stand in it, speak from it, live through it, because the most radical thing you can do at this point in your life is to refuse to be anything but free. Emotional boundaries and self-respect mean loving yourself enough to never water a garden that leaves you dry. Thanks so much for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed the content. Remember to subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to get notified about all our latest videos. Don't forget to share this with friends or family who could benefit from these messages. See you in the next one.